Hi, my name is Mary Lovelock. I'm the Senior Solicitor of the Elder Abuse Service at Legal Aid Office in Gosford. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Darkinjung people, the traditional custodians of the land that we gather on today, and to pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us today. So thanks for joining us today. We appreciate your time in coming to listen to us. My name is Mary Lovelock. I'm the Senior Solicitor in the Elder Abuse Service. The Elder Abuse Service is a Commonwealth funded trial for 3 years, and we are one of 5 elder abuse services nationally. I'd like to do a bit of introduction to the team. So my name is Mary Lovelock. I've been with Legal Aid for about 13 years. Prior to working as a lawyer, I was a registered nurse for many years. And so I was particularly interested in the elder abuse service because elder abuse is really at that intersection of health and law. So it was an opportunity that came up for me that I just grabbed with 2 hands. But I'd like to introduce you to the rest of our team. I'd like to introduce you to Tanya Chapman, who's the other solicitor in the service. Tanya, did you want to say a few words?
My name is Tanya Chapman. I was in private practice for about 5 years, specialising in elder law. Most of my clients were 60 years and older, and I became familiar with elder law problems for older people, in particular older people experiencing abuse. And I did become a bit frustrated that I was only able to provide legal advice and assistance. So this service is a great opportunity to be able to provide assistance, not only for the legal problems, but other problems the older person is experiencing.
Thanks, Tanya. And the social worker in our team is Lynn McLennan. Lynn, did you want to introduce yourself to the audience?
Hi, I'm Lynn McLennan, and I guess for me as a social worker, I've come from health. I was in health for 15 years. So I have on many occasions had clients experiencing elder abuse, and I have seen firsthand the effects of it on the person's mental and physical health, as well as the impacts on the larger family system. So I was really excited to see a service tackling this issue, which aimed to assist in a very dynamic and empowering way. As a social worker in health, I didn't always see the outcomes for clients. So to be part of a service that can provide not only practical solutions through legal frameworks and social work frameworks working together, I also thought the collaboration would be a very empowering and supportive process for the client.
Thanks, Lynn. So we've got about 45 minutes to talk about our service. At the outset, I'd like to thank Compass for sponsoring this webinar and making our service as guest editor. Compass is a national website. They've got a huge amount of resources on their website, and you can find them at compass.info. And we'll talk a little bit more about that towards the end of the presentation. So we wanted to talk a little bit about our service. So while we can talk about what we do, we thought we might actually give you a bit of a look into what our team meetings what our team meetings look like. So what we thought we might do is describe our model. We use an interdisciplinary model of service delivery. We'll talk a little bit about what that actually means, technically what it means. We'll talk a little bit about why we chose that service model. And then we'll do a little team meeting mock-up. Look, it might be a little bit awkward, it might be a little bit stilted, but stay with us because we really wanted to show you how it actually works. I suppose at the outset, I'd like to acknowledge the work that we're already building on, the fantastic work of Caxton's in Brisbane, who's a community legal centre that's been tackling elder abuse in really innovative and responsive ways for a long time. Seniors' rights and other community legal centres that work in the elder abuse space. I suppose hopefully some of you or many of you will have read the article that was attached to Compass for this month about our model of service delivery. We use an integrated model of service delivery which has social workers and lawyers working together to tackle elder abuse. And I thought at the outset, Lynn might want to give us a bit of a technical description of what an integrated model involves. So over to you, Lynn.
Thanks, Mary. So the interdisciplinary model that we are using in our team has a primary aim to work towards a common goal as discussed in consultation with our clients, whilst also bringing in our different professional perspectives and interventions. This is as opposed to the multidisciplinary team, which is defined as a team of professionals from different disciplines who develop individual care plans, which are not considered to overlap in order to improve the client care. Hence, we aim to work towards a process of collaboration, which includes collaboration with our clients, setting priorities, who is doing what, when, and what are the client's goals that we are working towards. We make sure that we are doing our part in the overall plan, contributing to the goal and advocating for the key issues from our different perspectives. We share information to improve our clients' outcomes, and we review and assess these outcomes. Now, I'll open it up to the team to discuss further why we are using this approach.
Thanks, Lynn. So we're a service that operates on the Central Coast. We've only been up and running for 12 months. So what we had to do is pull together a whole, research from a whole lot of other services about how they work and make decisions about how we were going to work together as a team. So we settled on an interdisciplinary approach, and there's a number of reasons why we've chosen that approach. Maybe Tanya might want to eliminate on a few of them.
Yeah, so what we saw first off, really in your face, is that clients experiencing elder abuse, the legal solution or the legal part of the problem is not all of the problem. So a person experiencing elder abuse, they have got a legal problem there, but they also might have problems with housing. They might have issues of capacity. So the capacity might be affecting their ability to initiate legal proceedings, but it also might affect their ability to provide evidence that will be reliable in getting a successful outcome. The elder abuse might sit in family relationships, and it might be a long history of an abusive relationship. It could just be a relationship of dependency where a child might have been dependent on the parent for many, many years financially and not want to be cut off. And so they've turned to abuse to continue the financial support. Or it might be an older person who's incredibly dependent on a child. And so the family relationship has kind of created this environment where the abuse can take place. There's also issues around so housing, finances, family, and sometimes helping with the legal solution, the legal problem, might not help with something like the housing or the family side of things. It might actually make it worse. So we need to take into account all of that when addressing the problem.
Yeah, we really wanted to ensure that we had, with the multifaceted issue that is elder abuse, have a holistic approach that will be coming from an empowering legal lens alongside a trauma-informed and a strength-based lens. Because clients come into the service, they're in crisis and they need support to not only understand the legal options available to them, but ways to navigate these options through supportive, strength-based and client-centered interventions, as well as interventions that ensures a client's safety is prioritised.
Look, yeah, as stated before, so elder abuse doesn't only involve legal issues, it's complex family, long-standing family dynamics. And the legal remedy sometimes can be a really blunt remedy, and it may actually fracture family relationships. So we need to really understand and respect what the older person actually wants to achieve. And we have to, it's a human rights-based model that puts the client at the centre of all decision making. And sometimes that means that the client is willing to tolerate some level of distress or some level of abuse because that's what they want. but hopefully our intervention will incrementally improve their circumstances. And I think, I mean, for that reason alone, we need to think collaboratively about how we assist our clients.
Yeah, because elder abuse, by its definition, is it's perpetrated by someone the older person trusts and is close to. So statistically, we know that it's predominantly children and carers who are the abusive person. And you've got to take into account the client's wishes. And the wishes might be that they would prefer to maintain the relationship with the child or with the carer, even though that person is abusing them. So we've got to make sure that the client is fully informed of their legal options, but at the end of the day, they've got to be able to choose the outcome, and the decision is in their hands, and we've got to respect that.
And sometimes that's really difficult. Sometimes that's really difficult, Tanya, for like other family members to understand and accept as well too, isn't it?
It is. Sometimes that protective urge comes into place where you're just thinking, well, mum's in a bad place. Why aren't you doing enough to protect her? But we've recognised that elder abuse is sometimes just disempowering the older person, taking away control of their lives, taking away their ability to make decisions. And in trying to address that, we need to make sure we're not doing that as well. We need to empower them to make decisions and put control back in their hands.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
And sometimes the legal process in itself can be traumatic and stressful. And Lynn, as our social worker, can really support the older person understand and navigate that process.
Yeah.
The other point that we'd like to make is that I often say that elder abuse sits like about 15 or 20 years behind where DV is. And DV has developed really sophisticated and nuanced responses to domestic violence. And one of those is the acknowledgement that we need to sometimes assist the perpetrator of elder abuse to be able to support the older person. So imagine that there's someone living with the older person that has a mental health or a drug and alcohol issue, and the older person finds it really difficult to sort of evict them, which is part of our case study, because they acknowledge that they need help as well too. And so the interdisciplinary model allows for our social worker to provide some support to that perpetrator, link them in with services perhaps, which will ultimately support the older person to make better decisions.
And, you know, sometimes also all the older person wants is just that support, as you're saying, Mary, because we have to remember that family relationships are very complex. And, you know, we seem to forgive family much easier and excuse poor behaviour much easier within that system. But we also, you know, a lot of the times, you know, there are mental health issues that impact on that perpetrator, or drug and alcohol issues, and which the client feels if these issues are addressed, then the perpetrator will maybe change their behaviour.
Yeah. Thanks, Lynn. So we're going to go into our little mock team meeting here. And the team meeting is based on the case study that was attached to the paper. So I'm just going to go into team meeting mode here. So hi team. So we've got a new referral. So our new referral is Liz. She's an older woman, and she's referred to us by the social worker at the hospital. So Liz recently had a fall, and she was just in outpatients having some rehab for a knee injury that she endured during the fall. And she became really upset over some issues. And so the social worker was called, and she disclosed to the social worker her situation at home. And the social worker was concerned enough to ask Liz whether the social worker could refer Liz to our service for some support. And so all we know at this stage is what the social worker has told us, that Liz is 72 years old. She owns her own house. She lives alone. She's a widow. She has a granddaughter that she's supported on and off for about 25 years. So the granddaughter has lived with her for periods in the past, and often it's kind of ended with friction and the granddaughter's left. what's happened now is that the granddaughter has moved back home. She's lost her job during COVID. It appears that she has some drug issues. The social worker thinks she might be using meth or something like that. The social worker is a little bit concerned for Liz. Liz sort of disclosed to Liz disclosed to the social worker that sometimes she's a bit frightened of the granddaughter. And Liz expressed to the social worker that she wanted some support around managing the granddaughter. I think she said she wants the granddaughter out of the house, and she's asked the granddaughter to leave, and the granddaughter has just sort of ignored her. So kind of at this stage, that's all we know about Liz. So I might sort of go to you first, Tanya, to talk a little bit about what the legal options might be for Liz.
Yeah, so it sounds like her legal option she's going to be looking at is if there's abuse and if there's a risk to safety, the first option immediately coming to mind is an AVO. So if that's the route she wants to go down, we can assist her in working with police to get an AVO against the granddaughter. And a part of that would be the exclusion clause that, you know, the granddaughter can't go near the house. If the abuse isn't serious enough to warrant an AVO, or if she doesn't want to have that against her granddaughter, the other option would be a notice to vacate, where she would just give her granddaughter the notice saying, you know, 30 days to move out. And then if the granddaughter doesn't move out, involving the police to get an eviction. Obviously...
Did you want to explain a little bit to Lynn about what a notice to vacate does?
Yeah, so firstly, it's a record. So she might have said to the granddaughter before, I want you to move out, but there's no proof of that. So it helps to have a record saying, I did ask this person to leave. And it's a formalized request where you say, I give you till this date. It gives them a deadline and it's in writing. And then that way, when the deadline comes, if the person still hasn't moved out, our client could call the police and say, this person's now trespassing, and that document is their record. Unfortunately, we don't find that the police are willing to get involved, even though this is a criminal trespass. The police will normally say to them, it's a civil matter, or if it's a family matter, and tell them they've got to take legal proceedings, in which case we could help Liz with civil law proceedings to get the granddaughter evicted. Yeah. But obviously that's it's a stressful process.
Sometimes the police are reluctant to get involved because, you know, they perceive it as a civil matter. Sometimes the police do get involved, and obviously if it's serious enough and there's physical abuse involved, the police will, you know, take out an ADO. So Lynn, did you want to talk a little bit about what you could contribute to our clients' journey at the moment?
Absolutely. As you were talking, there's quite a few things that came to mind. So I would really like to be able to speak with Liz about her relationship with her granddaughter, just to get a better understanding and a sense of her history with her granddaughter, the dynamics of their relationship. So I think this process will also give us a better understanding of the client's strengths, as well as what legal pathways would suit her situation best. You know, it'll be an understanding of just that relationship you talked about, you know, her being supportive throughout that time. Has she been more of a mother figure? You know, it really needs that exploration to help us just maybe traverse where she's actually at. And yeah, I'd like to talk to Liz about her concerns also that she might have about her safety, what Lauren's abusive behaviour is like, and to discuss with her an initial safety plan. So, you know, this could be, you know, quite a number of different sort of scenarios that we can look at. And if she's because we don't really know just yet what the type of abuse is. We've been hearing a bit about maybe some verbal stuff, but I think we really need to unpack that a bit more, and build that rapport, obviously, with Liz as we sort of go through and just have these discussions about her situation. Obviously, she's willing to open up. She's done that with the social worker in the hospital. So that's a first step, and that's a really good sign that she's wanting that support. So, you know, that gives me some hope that she'll be able to talk further with us about what she would like to happen. A lot of times too, the older person, you know, with the stress that comes with this, might be experiencing, you know, some levels of, you know, feeling low and teary and upset through this whole process. So I just want to touch base around her mental state and see where she's at.
I don't have any information about her capacity, but
Okay.
it's something that we need to take into account when both you and Tanya is speaking to her. Just going to put, is this a client that we want a joint conference, or do you think it would work better with Tanya seeing the client first and just sort of sussing out what the client wants and what the situation is, what the legal options are?
I think that would work best if Tanya did step in and just sort of, you know, check those out first initially and introduce, I guess, myself as well.
Okay, all right. And I don't think there are any kind of minor children involved, so I don't kind of see any potential mandatory reporting issues or anything like that. So,
but that's something I can double check. I'll talk to her first, find out if there are any grandchildren involved, and that may influence how we bring Lynn in. But
okay.
yeah, I'll suss out the facts, make sure we've got the right information, and then yeah, as soon afterwards as possible, I think talking to Lynn would be best, especially to get a safety plan in place. But I'll definitely confirm that with the client to make sure she's happy to do that.
Okay, so I'm building on some previous comments that I've made. So just to Lynn, taking into account what we already know, is there anything that Tanya should be aware of when speaking to Liz? Or are there any red flags she should be aware of around risk?
Look, I think we just sort of take it very gently with Liz, just see what she's sort of willing to give up. I be mindful also that she's been to the was it a fracture clinic, Mary, that you talked about?
Yeah, that like an outpatient's physio. So it's probably a fracture clinic.
So, you know, I think we need to also think about, is that part of the, like, did that happen with her granddaughter? What sort of concerns we have there? I think we can sort of explore that further, because that could be a telltale sign of, you know, a worsening abusive situation at home. And, you know, our intervention, is she able to, what times of the day is she able to talk? Is Lauren there? Is she overhearing the conversations? You know, she might be trying to isolate grandmother further.
Okay. Actually, that just reminds me, Tanya, before you contact the client, can you just touch base with the social worker that referred her and just make sure that we've got safe contact details, because the social worker didn't address that in the referral process, just to make sure that it's safe to contact her and what the best way is.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay, so I've got some actions arising out of this meeting. So one is that Tanya's going to touch base with the social worker, see if there's any more information we know, make sure that the contact details are safe contact details, and then you're going to reach out to the client, and then Lynn is going, subject to that information, Lynn's going to do a psychosocial and risk and safety assessment. Yep. Is there anything else that we need to think about?
No, I think that's it for now.
Okay, all right. So now we fast forward to about a week later, where we come back together and the team reports to each other. So maybe Tanya, did you want to lead that?
Yes, so an update on Liz. Both myself and Lynn have had a chance to speak to her now. Lynn, do you want to just update us on how it went with you first?
Yeah, look, thank you so much for touching base with Liz first and letting her know about my service. It was really lovely to talk to her, actually. Liz is a pretty amazing woman. She was a nurse back in her working life. So for many years, she had worked, I guess, in the local hospital. So she knows, people in the community. When she finished work, she had volunteered at the hospital for a long time as well. Her and her husband did a lot of travel both in Australia and overseas. So she's got some fabulous stories. She was really wonderful to just engage with and just get to know her a lot better and build that rapport with her. But I guess also what has happened, she'd had these connections in the community, but with COVID, she has been a lot more isolated. So she hasn't had the same sort of connection to her community that she would normally have had prior. So I think that's also, along with what's happening at home, has hindered things for her, and she's, it's taken a toll on her. She was married for 52 years, she was telling me. So
it's a minute for that.
I know, right? How amazing. Her husband passed away 5 years ago, but she'd remain active and still doing a lot of things and engaging, but it was a really, difficult time for her, and she has felt his loss quite deeply, obviously, after 52 years. She has 2 children, so there's Lorraine and Mark. Both of them live in Queensland, though. She does speak with them more Lorraine than Mark, but she's got a better relationship with her. Lorraine is actually Lauren's mum, so I guess they talk a lot about Lauren and what's been happening as well. But I think Lorraine feels quite helpless because she's in Queensland and they haven't had, the ability to see each other for a long time as well. But yeah, those are some really good supportive people in her life, which I think, we need to be mindful of who's around her, especially going through this process, that can assist with, laying out what we need to do from here.
Did you make any assessment of her capacity at all?
Yeah, I'm getting to that. So no, that's okay. That's okay. I just wanted to give you a bit of a sense of who Liz is and what sort of her relationship.
That's the problem with lawyers. We just kind of jump to facts all the time.
Relax, hear the story. This is an amazing, lovely lady. So yeah, what had happened, so a few years back, even though she's had a lengthy relationship with Lauren on and off for many years, Lorraine, her daughter, and their family moved up to Queensland I think it was about 10 years ago. And so Lauren has sort of flipped in and out of New South Wales and being close, to other friends here in New South Wales, but she's had a lot of issues with, Lauren, Liz's grandmother's got a history of borderline personality disorder, as well as like a depressive illness there, and has had a history of using drugs in the past, mostly methamphetamines, which Liz believes she's taking at the moment as well, because when she first moved back with her nan during COVID, and when she lost her job in Sydney, she moved back in with Nan. She was helping a lot, was doing a lot of wonderful things with Nan around the house. And then Nan saw a decline, and she had stopped helping, had started becoming really short with her, had started really, firing back up and getting quite angry with Nan. I did explore around the recent trip to the hospital and the engagement with the social worker there. So the fracture was not from an altercation with Lauren, which is good to know.
Right.
The majority of the abuse has been verbal abuse, but it's been really, quite fierce. and quite a huge impact, obviously, as you can imagine, on Liz, especially being so isolated and not having that level of support. She did, though, talk about a really wonderful neighbour that she has next door. So this person is a person that she recognises having, you know, a really long-term relationship with. They've been neighbours for 20 odd years. So she knows Liz, she knows Lauren, she knows other family members as well. And so, you know, they're really great friends, really great support. So I did talk to her about a bit of a plan, a bit of a safety plan for when things fire up at home with Lauren.
Yeah.
Because the bottom line is that she doesn't want Lauren to leave. She's more worried about Lauren being somewhere else and not knowing what's happening for her. She's got more of that maternal bond with her, I guess, having those supports throughout her life, and she feels really, you know, strongly and closely, you know, towards her. So she does.
Do you think that's the truth? She really wants Lauren to stay there?
Look, I really do. I feel that she, because of the way that she was describing their relationship, I feel that she, is more of a sort of a parent figure, and they're more sort of, they have been friends, and, you know, they share a lot of stuff together. But when she's had these periods of feeling really low in terms of her depression and then starting to use drugs, that has, you know, obviously, you know, polarized their relationship, where now she's really, she's quite torn, but she's more worried about Lauren being somewhere else where she doesn't know what's happening for her. And
that kind of ties in with the instructions she's given me, which is very much the case of, yes, the abuse has gotten quite bad. She's feeling stressed and she's feeling endangered. She doesn't feel safe in her house. But it's kind of, she wants Lauren out of the house. She kind of wants to feel like her house is her own again. And she does want Lauren out, but only if Lauren has other accommodation. So we spoke about the ABO and we spoke about the notice to vacate, but neither are an option she wants to take if there's nothing available for Lauren. It lies entirely on Lauren having other accommodation.
That's right. That's, yeah.
Tanya, did you want to speak to any more advice or any more instructions that you got from Liz?
Yeah, so we have flagged a kind of middle ground, a soft transition, kind of a last chance option. So AVO's out, notice to vacate is out. It's just not on the table because she does want Lauren to get assistance and to have a house. She doesn't want her homeless. So what we talked about was a cohabitation agreement, where I would help her draft an agreement that sets out terms of cohabitation, something along the lines of who contributes financially and how much, who helps with what chores, what are the normal, like, acceptable going and leaving hours, noise, and what happens if Liz wants to terminate the agreement. So it would have an eviction clause in there.
And have you had a chance, and have you and Lynn had a chance to talk about the sort of things that are important to Liz to put in those, to put in that cohabitation agreement?
Well, what I'd really like to do is to have an appointment with Liz and both of us there, because I think she needs to be empowered. This is a document she's going to have to enforce herself. So there's no use in the document if she doesn't feel in control of it or ownership. So I definitely think she's going to need Lynn's help in feeling that way, and we'll draft it together. She's got to have ownership over this document. And I'm very, very happy that she's got a safety plan in place, because I think once this document's ready, we're going to have to decide on a safe time that she gives it to Lauren. And if Lauren responds badly, we're going to need that safety plan in place.
Excellent. And I mean, Lynn, it's a cohabitation agreement. It's a form of contract, but the reality is that it's very difficult to enforce that through the courts, but hopefully it'll create sort of different discussions and different expectations between Liz and Lauren, which may kind of improve the situation for Liz.
Okay, well, that's good to know what that would sort of look like, so I can then help her to sort of understand that a bit better as well. Maybe look at exceptions in her life where she has sort of been able to be strong like that again. I'll talk to her a bit more about her mental health herself. She's been feeling quite low and quite teary, and she has had a history of depression, so that's something to also be mindful of for us.
Did she have sort of grief, linking with any grief counselling after her husband died?
No, look, she was, she didn't. She felt that she was able to sort of manage that quite well. But I think at this stage, some sort of counselling because of obviously the situation that's been happening. So that's something else that I want to touch base with her as an ongoing sort of support that she might look at. But yeah, I'm thinking at the moment, just going back to the issues of how teary she is and how she's feeling. Look, I just wanted to also say that I touched base with her about whether or not she had any suicidal ideation, because she sort of mentioned briefly that she was not wanting to be here. So I explored whether she actually had a plan, but there was no plan in place, which is good. She was more sort of saying that as a, it's sort of as a stress sort of relief, like I just, or a stress sort of mechanism as well. I just don't want to be here. I'm just, overwhelmed. So she's going to be talking to a GP further, and I talked to her about a mental health plan and sort of supports that she can kind of put in place because of that history of depression as well. Like it's something to be mindful of, but also for us to know that because when I spoke to her at times, I did sort of wonder about her capacity. And as I got to speak to her more and more, because there were a few sort of gaps I was sort of seeing, but I think it's mostly to do with her mental state and how she's feeling and the stress of the situation. So
I mean, that's fantastic background for us to know in making decisions for her. And I mean, obviously she's been really high functioning. She was a registered nurse for many years, so she'd have some health understanding as well too. Okay, so the actions are that you're going to develop a cohabitation agreement. You can have a joint conference with her, and that's probably the end of this stage. And then we're going to move seamlessly into part 3 of our team meeting. So there's about another week or so that we've undertaken further contact with her, and we've come back together to talk about the outcomes for Liz and the outcomes of the joint meeting that both Lynn and Tanya had with her. So either Lynn or Tanya, you can have a crack at that, whoever wants to go.
Okay, so the agreement is drafted. The client is very comfortable with the terms in it, and I think she's feeling very comfortable with this line of action. She knows all about her legal options, and this is the way she wants to proceed. She sees it as kind of not turning her back on her granddaughter, but giving her one last chance. So she's kind of standing up for herself at the same time. And I did feel that she seemed a bit more optimistic about this, but Lynn is still going to work with her about when's going to be the right time to give the document to the granddaughter, and to make sure she's got that safety plan in place.
Yeah, Tanya, I had that discussion with her. So she's talking about you know, when's the right time. I think usually sort of in the morning, late afternoon, things seem to sort of sometimes worsen for Lauren, or she'll go out and then she'll come back and she'll look pretty much drug affected. What we've worked out also in terms of a safety plan around that is she's actually already done this. She's got a bag ready. It's all made up and actually at her neighbour's house.
Yeah.
So she, you know, can go there if things start to escalate. She's not wanting to really contact police. She feels that she could probably safely get there, but she'll also talk to her neighbour about when she's doing it, so that she's, you know, nearby and can sort of help. So her neighbour feels that she's, you know, I've had that discussion around just the safety, obviously, but she feels that she's able to just sort of be there, kind of just, you know, close to the fence line, and just make sure that she can assist if needed. So that's kind of a bit of their plan. She wants to be able to do it, sort of mid-morning time when Lauren's sort of getting up, and just capturing her in the open space that's the sort of lounge room kitchen, where she can sort of be closer to the door and get out if she needs to, if things start to escalate. So she is feeling confident. I think she's really feeling more empowered. Having spoken with you, Tanya, and understanding that, you know, how this agreement can sort of work, and, you know, all the other options, the legal options that you've spoken to her about as well. And, you know, feeling also that you guys, you know, that we have spoken to her and just checked in every time along the way as to how, you know, she feels around the process, and and working with her on where she's at. Yeah. So she's really quite thankful. I don't think she's sort of felt that, you know, sort of empowered through
she's
that.
Been heard.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I suppose Tanya and I are just like the granddaughter out of the house, and for Liz to have the house back to herself. But we have to acknowledge that, you know, Liz makes the decisions in these problems. Is there any other referrals that we need to think about for Liz? Has there been any issue around the daughter using her finances, or any other referrals that we need to sort of put on our radar?
Financially, Liz is quite savvy. So I did consider whether she needs to see a financial counsellor, but I think no, she's there doesn't seem to have been any financial abuse, and she's handling things quite well at this stage.
And have we got like a little follow-up plan for her that, say, Lynn touches base with her for a period of time?
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say, that so for my end, I've spoken to her about the liaising with her GP, which she actually did do, and she was able to get a mental health plan. So her next step is to have a look at some counselling services in the local area. So I want to be able to continue that support with Liz, and you know, work with her on, you know, where she's at, what's sort of happening for her, how things have gone, and just continue that level of interaction and support along the way. I think she's really benefiting from that. She's feeling much more empowered, having someone just that she can contact, or someone just there, you know, that understands her situation, knows what's happening for her. You know, she was initially feeling quite embarrassed, I guess you would say, you know, something that we kind of talked about, because, you know, she didn't want people knowing that this was happening in her family.
Yeah.
For her, she's grown up in a you know, society where and more deeply.
And she's been really competent, you know, she's been in a position where
That's right.
You know, she's worked and been independent, earned her own money.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, for her, there was that sense of all of that was coming up for her. So we've been able to, you know, work through some of those feelings, and you know, she is feeling stronger, she is feeling empowered. So I'm happy to continue that support with her in that journey.
Thanks, team. So that's a bit of a insight into how we actually work as a team, and the process of how clients come to us. and how we work with them. And hopefully we've been able to illustrate how we actually work together and how we build on each other's strengths, and always putting the client at the center of decision making. We don't get it perfect. You may be sitting there thinking, why didn't they blah, 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 blah. So if you've got any questions that you wanted to pose to us, or any comments that you want to make about that particular scenario, things that we might have overlooked, please feel free to pose a question, and they can, the moderator can put it to us. And as I said, it's a model that's built on other existing models of interdisciplinary practice. It's a model that we've developed in response to our client base as well too. It's not a model that works for every client. And what we thought we might do in the remaining time is look a little bit at what works well in this sort of model, and maybe some of the challenges. So, I don't know, Tanya, did you want to talk a little bit to kind of what works well in our interdisciplinary model? That's if there's some questions, we'll put them through.
So from a legal perspective, one of the things that I found that works really well is that when advising the client of their legal options, we've seen that the legal options generally are scary. They're not ideal, they're not an easy fix. So when you tell the client this, a client who's already been abused, it's confronting, it's disappointing, it can cause them further distress. Just the advice in itself is going to cause them more stress and unhappiness. So having Lynn available to help the client through that, when sometimes the lawyer looks like the bad person giving the bad news, having someone on the team that can help them process those emotions and deal with the legal process in itself is just invaluable. It's one of the key benefits of this model.
Sure. We've had a question come through from Anita about, do you find that many clients don't want to take action? And I'll add my bit, but any other team members that want to jump in and add their bit. It's a sad bit about elder abuse is that very often what happens is we'll get a social worker contact us and say, we've got this client, they're in a pretty dire situation, they're at home and the circumstances are very poor and maybe there's risk, but the client just doesn't want to take it any further. And we can't assist the client unless the client consents to our service. So unless it's a matter that can be referred to the police by the social worker, that is kind of a real gap in supporting older people. There's a lot of things that we're trying to do about it, and I think what Compass is trying to do about it in their remit is raise awareness of what elder abuse is, because they talk about elder abuse being hidden in plain sight. And since being in the service for 12 months, we can really see how that plays out in that many older people, they don't recognise that they're in abusive situations, or if they do, they're in some denial about it. And the path forward is too hard for them, because the path forward might mean being isolated from the rest of their family. And so the challenge for us, not just our team, but our community, is how do we support older people in those situations? And I suppose one of the great things that's come out of COVID is that isolation has been spoken about a lot, not just for older people, but for all the community. And there's been like a general message to check on your neighbours, keep in touch with the community. I mean, that's something that can break down elder abuse. But yeah, the sad recognition is that many older people don't want to report elder abuse.
And sometimes too, can I add to that, Mary, that a lot of older people are afraid that might mean their carer is removed from a caring role and they might have to go into care, into an aged care facility, say. So it kind of, they might feel trapped and uncertain about, a future where they thought that they'd have someone there supporting them, but that person may have become, an abusive carer, an abusive person. So that raises a lot of fear.
Yeah, and another benefit of the model is that some of the barriers to pursuing the legal option we can still address. So if some of the barriers are that the older person wouldn't have a carer, or that there's fear of retaliation, they need a safety plan, or that they're worried about the breakdown of the family relationship. So we can work on some of those barriers first to empower the older person to eventually be able to take those legal options if they choose to do so.
Anita's just posed another question. Do you think we're going down the route of mandatory reporting for elder abuse? I think we're a long way from that at the moment. I think what is happening that is interesting and promising in some ways, the ACT legislation making elder abuse a crime. Because at the moment, elder abuse is dealt with under existing civil and criminal laws. And it's difficult to track sort of how elder abuse is actually being dealt with in the courts. And so making elder abuse a crime, like domestic violence is a crime, does a number of things. So it kind of raises awareness, it creates consequences for perpetrators of elder abuse, and it creates a framework for us to track how elder abuse is dealt with by the courts. Did you want to add any more to that, Tanya or Lynn?
I think mandatory reporting has a strong counter argument that's just, it's out there. Basically, one of the strongest arguments against it is that unlike children, when you're talking about mandatory reporting for older persons, are you disrespecting their rights as adults to make decisions for themselves? Even if you don't agree with that decision, even if it puts the older person at risk, don't adults have the right to make decisions for themselves? Even if they're crappy decisions. Yeah. So it's a strong counter argument to the mandatory reporting suggestion. And I think it's what's going to cause, there's not going to be a decision there anytime soon because it is such a strong argument.
Yeah, a lot of countries like Canada and I think the US and Ireland, I think they all have those systems in place where there is mandatory reporting. So it'd be interesting to look at what they've sort of done and how they've been able to negotiate, I guess, that issue of, you know, the reducing agency, I guess you might say, for the older person.
I mean, elder abuse is at an interesting and promising stage in Australia, in that, you know, the Commonwealth Government has committed to funding a number of, well, this service trial at Legal Aid New South Wales, but also a number of other services as well too, to sort of get research and evidence about elder abuse. So at least they're kind of recognising in the face of our ageing demographics that elder abuse is a huge issue. I mean, we've got a prevalence study that's coming out early next year, which will help us really understand what services we might need to meet the demand for elder abuse as well too. But as I said, it's about 15, I feel my own personal view is it's about 15 or 20 years behind where domestic violence is. I've just got another question here, just curious about the legal avenues outside your AVO pathway. After you've sent your notice to leave in Queensland, we would then look at the option of applying to QCAT, which is like NCAT in New South Wales, a tribunal for warrant of possession, which police can enforce. Is that similar in New South Wales? Oh, it'd be great if it was. No, it's not. And that kind of that issue kind of highlights the differing options between states in this particular issue. We chose this issue as a case study in the article and for our discussion today, mainly because it's a really prominent issue. Based on our client base, about 50% of the clients we see, the perpetrators are adult son and children. And most of the issues we see are around housing and money. And the housing issues are predominantly around granny flat arrangements that have gone wrong. But the main thing is getting rid of adult children from the house, adult children, adult grandchildren. And COVID has sort of amplified that as well too, because, you know, people have lost their jobs and so they're moving home. Have you found? So I'm just looking at another question from our Tassie colleagues. So Tasmania Legal Aid has also been funded for an elder abuse service as well. Have you found some police more responsive than others? Yeah, we have. The response is inconsistent, but what is promising is in New South Wales, and I'm not quite sure what's happened in other states, as part of the police response to elder abuse is the funding of aged crime prevention officers who have a particular focus on vulnerable older people. So our particular service, along with the Ageing and Disability Commission, which is the Elder Abuse Hotline, have participated in training to help police sort of understand our client's perspective in a different way. And we hope that by working more closely with police, we'll come to sort of a more integrated solution around that issue. All right, so we're just about to jump in and close. So we just wanted to thank you for tuning in today. There's a number of resources that are going to be attached to the Compass Info website, and I might hand over to Bev to sort of finish off.
Thanks, Mary. Look, my name is Bev Lang. I'm the Executive Officer of Elder Abuse Action Australia, or EAAA, as we're going to abbreviate. EAAA was funded by the Commonwealth Attorney General's Department in middle of last year, 2019, to develop a knowledge hub about the abuse of older people. That knowledge hub is now Compass and was launched almost a year ago. Compass.info is a meeting place for information, support and stories, and speaks to diverse audiences from older people, their friends, family and carers, but also to service providers and frontline professionals, as you've been listening to this morning, or this afternoon, in fact. I'd really like to thank Mary and Tanya and Lynn for what I think has been a wonderful insight into the model of work that's both collaborative and integrated. We know that it's better if there are more heads than one looking at a particular issue, and you know, a legal solution isn't the same as a social work solution or a health solution. So we need all of those folks to be able to collaborate and work together to solve some of the complexities around elder abuse. This project is one of 12 that was funded under the Commonwealth's National Plan to respond to the abuse of older people, released in March of 2019. And over the coming months, EAAA through Compass will bring many more examples of the great work that's being undertaken to end the abuse of older people. We'll continue to bring to light the ageism and discrimination that underpins this type of abuse, and what individuals can do to protect themselves and, in fact, the people they love. We encourage you to explore compass.info, share the resources with your colleagues and maybe your clients, and to let us know if there's any content you'd like to see that's currently not up on the site. We have a featured topics page in the main navigation of compass.info. Under that, you'll see the article from Mary underneath the Working Together to Tackle Elder Abuse page. You'll see many resources they've created, some very fabulous other webinars, podcasts and such. So we encourage you to explore everything that's available, not just on that page, but right throughout the site. The recording for this video will be available in the next 24 hours up on Compass, and you'll also, all of the participants of this webinar will receive a link to the recording on our YouTube channel. So please make yourself avail yourself to those, as well as other resources on our YouTube channel. It looks at some of the other webinars that we've been doing. This is I think the fourth in our series of webinars so far, and we look forward to bringing you many, many more in the future. So again, thank you to Mary and her team. They approached us to be part of this program, and we're thrilled they did. So thank you very much, and have a good afternoon, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.